Ireland and Australia, folks, this Saturday. Big clash for the #1 side of the world against an 8th place Wallabies team who only a couple of weeks ago troubled the French away from home and then last week lost to the Italians. So which Australian side is going to show up? We'll kind of have to wait and see. The Irish have been remarkably consistent. But anyway, we'll go through some predictions, some stats, some lineups, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. If you're in the States and you want to watch this or any of the other games from the Autumn Nation series this weekend or last weekend's games or next weekend's games, check out Flow Rugby. Link down in the description, folks. There's still heaps of rugby to go. But this is pretty much the last big weekend. Recent history between the sides, pretty dominant in terms of the Irish getting the results. But we do have to look back to that 2018 tour of Australia by the Irish to kind of get those fixtures. So we're looking back to the Joe Schmidt era, 2018. Remember, it was 2-1. The Aussies opened with that win, which is no mean feat when you think about it, because that 2018 Irish side was bloody good, and then the Irish won the next two, and then you're looking back to matches in 2016, 2014. So not the most recent of recent history. These sides have not played for quite some time, so it's going to be good to see them back in action. But I mean, on paper, it seems like a pretty uphill battle for the Wallabies based on how things have been going, because the Irish, like I mentioned, barring a loss to New Zealand in New Zealand, in a series which they ended up winning, and then an away loss in France in the Six Nations, Ireland have been pretty bloody consistent, you know, and just very, very hard to beat. Whereas the Australians, as I mentioned, on their day, though, almost beat the bloody French away from home, which nobody's managed to do for quite some time. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Smart money says just go for Ireland because they should win it, but Australia, could they go from losing to Italy to beating Ireland? I don't know. Ireland squad is looking back to pretty much their premier outfit. Porter's back at loose head. Dan Sheehan's back starting. Tadhg Furlong continues on after captaining the side last week against Fiji. So captaincy duties relieved from him for another week, but still back to his scrummaging duties. Beirne's still there in the second row alongside James Ryan, who's back in the 23. Beirne had like 4 turnovers last week, man. The guy's a freak in the best kind of way. Peter Armani at 6. Josh van der Flier, World Player of the Year nominee. Josh van der Flier, if I can get that out my mouth. He's at 7. He's been having a phenomenal time of it. And Caelan Doris back to a more familiar number 8. So that's pretty much been Andy Farrell's premier and preferred starting lineup in 2022. Obviously with Kelleher out injured for quite some time, Sheehan has taken that number 2 jersey and just run with it, literally, because the guy's got wheels for a hooker. But there you go, pretty happy looking. Gibson-Park and Sexton 9-10, so that continues on. And Gibson-Park's distribution, I'm a broken record when I go on and on about how important it is to their game, but just the way he recycles the ball at that lightning speed, it just catches teams, I don't want to say unawares, because you know what's happening, but you just can't do anything about it at times, eh? So, yeah, and Sexton's back after not playing last week, so keeping the old legs fresh, I guess. Another World Player of the Year nominee. He'd be a 2-time winner if he managed to get it done. McCloskey and Ringrose, I'm chuffed for McCloskey to get another crack. At 12, he's been getting some real regular game time. I wouldn't say he set the world alight, but he's looked comfortable at international level, which is good. And Ringrose back starting at 13. Mack Hansen switches wings because Jimmy O'Brien switches from fullback to the left wing. And then Hugo Keenan is back at that familiar 15 jersey. So, yeah, like not quite the I don't want to say best, but like if you were going to pick a team, no injuries, it would look pretty close to this. I mean, Jimmy O'Brien's relatively new. Like I said, Stuart McCloskey doesn't get that much game time, but most of these guys are starters for Ireland, aren't they? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And the guys who are stepping up, like McCloskey and like O'Brien, just taking it to it like ducks to water. Herring's down to the bench. Healy's still there. Bealham's back in the 23. Joe McCarthy's in. They've tried a few different guys as that kind of next lock, haven't they? So good to see him get a crack. Jack Conan down to the bench. Craig Casey, Jack Crowley, and Bundee, having served the suspension, is going to get some game time, but only from the bench. For the Australians, bouncing back from that disappointing effort against the Italians. Remember, they could have won it if not for a wayward conversion at the death. I don't want to blame Ben Donaldson for that one because there's certainly moments prior to that in the game which could have been capitalised on. I just saw some lightning, so maybe we'll hear some thunder. James Slipper's back. He was rested last week. He's captain. He's loose head. Dave Parecki's also back, in Ala Alatoa is another one who relinquishes the captaincy from last week. So both the tie heads continue on, and both were captains, but not this week. Frost and Neville in the second row, and then back row is all different with Jed Holloway, Michael Hooper, and Rob Valtini's been back. Rob Valtini's been having a bloody good year. Like, he's not been talked about in terms of guys who were in that World Player of the Year conversation, but I like to think he was in the conversation somewhere, even if he didn't. I like to think he was shortlisted, and then they decided not. But Valtini's been very, very good. Just dynamic ball carrying, getting through his tackles, and importantly for him, he's kind of stayed fit for a full year. So, yeah, very, very pleasing for him to be back, and being alongside Michael Hooper's not bad. Not a bad way to get about things. Jed Holloway is very useful. Line out time. Nick White, Bernard Foley, that's a pretty experienced 19 combo. We can expect to see Nick White putting in a few of those famous box kicks of his. And Bernard has been the Iceman from the tee this year. The Aussies have been very good from the tee generally, barring last week's result. Hunter Paisami, Ikitau continues on in the midfield. Nawaqanitawase gets a second start. After starting last week against England, he gets a go against Ireland. Defensively is going to be a good question for that guy because he gets found out sometimes at Super Rugby level. So international level is going to be another step up against Jimmy O'Brien. So two relatively inexperienced guys up against each other at international level there. Tom Wright, likewise, he's been phenomenal ball in hand. He's another one that can be found out sometimes defensively, but geez, he's got gas. And Kellaway is back in the 23 at fullback this week. Fainga'a drops to the bench. Tom Robinson got a try last week. He's still there on the bench. Tupou will want to add some impact from the bench as well. Skelton's down to the bench. Pete Samu. Feel a bit unlucky for Pete Samu, but I guess who does he displace if he does get a start? They want the line-out option in Holloway. They're going to play Hooper if he's available, and Valtini, like I said, it's just been phenomenal. So it's tough. And then Jake Gordon, Noah Lolosio, and Pataya round out the rest of the bench. So, yeah, stats-wise, I mean, you got to think the Aussies need to start well. You don't want to be chasing this Irish side down, but the Aussies concede more points in the first 20 minutes than pretty much every other first-tier team. I think Wales concede more than Australia. Australia's more than 7 points in the first 20, whereas Ireland concede less than 3. So, yeah, a good start would certainly help Dave Rennie's boys along the way. And Australia concede like 13 penalties a game. The discipline's been really bad. Like Ireland's 10. Australia concede pretty much a yellow card a game, whereas Ireland's like 1 every 5 games. But the discipline's going to need to be sharp. And they talk about it so much. And they still get whistled off the park, the Aussies, sometimes. Ireland's line-out is at 91%. Them and France are the best in 2022. It's kind of maybe no coincidence, right, that those 1 and 2 teams in the world. Australia's at 84. Again, worst of the Tier 1 teams. So, some improvements needed. But it's not all bad news, Australians. They're getting like 19 defenders beaten a game, which is about the same as the Irish. But the Irish make a lot more carries. So you've got some good direct ball carriers, the Australians. Kind of more dangerous per carry than the Irish. I may be stretching a wee bit, but you've got some dangerous ball carriers. Ireland play with a lot more possession and whatnot, so you could argue the carrying is effective. And the goal kicking, again, barring last week, Australia's goal kicking, get in trouble for calling. We in New Zealand often call the country Australia Aussie. Apparently Australians don't like that. Yeah, Australia's goal kicking has generally been among the best this year. The Iceman's been good. The Iceman is back, so we will see. Average score across the last 5 is 22-20 to Ireland. But, as I said, not all that recent history. So, bookies-wise, you're looking at 12 points for Ireland. Rugby forecast-wise, it's 17 points for Ireland. So, it's on at the Aviva. It's an evening kickoff this one. I think it's like 8 o'clock, which makes it 9 o'clock in the morning here in NZ. That'll be like 7 in the morning for you guys in Australia. So, get up, have some brekkie, watch some rugby. Happy, happy days. Ben O'Keefe is the ref for this one. Fingers crossed he has a good game. My dad's favourite ref, but not really. Anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts. And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.